And I should. Yes, I think we are already live. It's 9:30 and we are live.
Yep.
I'll just verify on Twitter or maybe on the YouTube just to check if it's live.
Yeah, I got a message from YouTube saying you are now live.
Awesome. Cool. So we'll just share it on Twitter as well. Okay, so hello everyone, and thank you for all who have joined the stream. So we are live already. So please share it with your friends on social media, and we'll be starting in a couple of minutes. So we have a few folks who have already joined, and today I'm joined by Shipa founder Bruno. Bruno, would you like to introduce yourself a bit?
Yeah, no, thanks for having me today. I have been in the cloud native space for some time now. My background, I'm an engineer as well. I was basically a sysadmin for many years before we had the nice titles of SREs and platform engineers and DevOps when we were just sysadmins at that time. I spent many years on there building platforms and automation around it. I had the opportunity to do a startup prior to this one, but mostly focused on the cloud native infrastructure space. So pulling together compute, network, and presenting it to your different clouds across to different clusters across clouds. And now I'm here at Shipa, trying to automate or make life a little bit better when it comes to application deployment and operations. And Catch is part of Shipa, or we spun it off as a project from Shipa.
Awesome. Glad to have you here. So everyone, it's really a good time to learn about Shipa, and Bruno is here with us, so he will be obviously sharing the vision as well of building Shipa and what are the problems that Shipa is trying to solve,
Mhm.
and also about the very new open source tool that they have launched, which is Ketch. So you might not have heard or might have heard or want to try it out. So we'll be having a first class demo from Bruno himself on Ketch and what it tries to solve and how you all can contribute. And stick to the end of the stream. We'll be doing a swag giveaway as well. So I will post this form link in the YouTube chat as well, so that you can actually just have to give your name and one way to contact, maybe your email or Twitter handler, and just make sure your messages are open, because sometimes it happens like I try to contact but the DMs are not open. So make sure I can contact you in any way, or you can maybe contact me, but it's better to give a contact. Anyways, it's a mandatory field. So and yes, we are very close to getting 1K subscribers, so I'm at 965. So thank you community to encouraging me to do more. And the previous streams have done really well, and you have appreciated all the streams that I have been doing with all the community leaders and folks on new and new topics. And I learn myself a lot during these streams, and there are a lot of my friends who are doing streams, and we all in the cloud native community are. That's why we call it as a cloud native community, because we are one, and we try to solve the challenges that are there in the ecosystem, and that's where new open source tools come in. So we should just try to see and understand what problem it's try to solving, and then probably get our hands dirty on it.
Hmm.
I think it'll be really interesting. So if I also have future streams coming up with Darren and Neil from Rancher and Portainer respectively. So just you can set a reminder for that as well. So hearing out from the leaders, and doing demos with them, and doing everything raw, keeping everything raw and keeping everything live makes things more interesting, because people can't hide anything. It's going straight out of their hearts that they are speaking. And also, it goes to me because I'm speaking. So if anything goes wrong, it goes wrong, it's fine, because it's not a conference. So it's just a simple stream, and we are live, we are doing everything raw. So direct from us to you. That's what it's all about. So let's learn Ketch today. And with that, I would just stop the share, and I think I will give it to Bruno
Yep.
for sharing.
There you go.
Yeah, you're all set.
Nice, nice. So again, thanks for the opportunity. It's really great to be here and talk more about Ketch and explain. And before I get into the demo itself and installing and showing some use of Ketch, as you mentioned, it's interesting to give a little bit of a background of why we wanted to start the project. As mentioned, I had the opportunity to build some cloud native technology before on the infrastructure side, but leading engineering during that time, I realized that my engineering team was actually having a hard time on scaling up on deploying the applications when it came to cloud native and Kubernetes. Kubernetes is great, and I think you probably have heard that it makes complicated things really easy, but it makes really easy things really complicated as well, right? And I started seeing that pattern on my team, and I started seeing that pattern across different organizations as well. So they were starting to get their feet wet on Kubernetes. And while you see those what I call cloud native or cloud forward companies that they were spending millions of dollars and they're bringing a massive team to build Kubernetes and put a platform around it, most enterprises out there, they don't have that luxury because just Kubernetes and infrastructure is not their core offering. And it's fair enough. But at the end of the day, they need to get their developers able to deploy and manage their applications and the platform engineering to have some control over what's being deployed, right? So with that vision and seeing that problem just growing as Kubernetes scale, we decided to then start Shipa. And I'm really glad that a really strong and nice team joined us to build on that vision and deliver Shipa. But we also noticed that as we were talking to folks about Shipa and organizations, we saw that the bridge between your CI/CD platform and Kubernetes is still pretty big. There's still a pretty big gap there. And folks are still having trouble on deploying the apps, understanding what are the objects, what are deployment sets, what are ingress rules, and so on and so forth. So we decided to subsection or dissect the deployment piece from Shipa and open source it as a project, which is Ketch. Called, and that's the project we started. We launched it a few weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken, and now we're trying to help the developers to cross that path or cross that bridge and be able to get their applications deployed on Kubernetes. And then from there, we can guide them on a vision through Shipa, which is a different, which is, I would say, it's a connected platform, but it's a different path with security embedded and so on. But our goal is to help developers get their applications deployed on Kubernetes without much complexity. So that's how Ketch was born.
So I have one question over here.
Yep.
Like, uh, from the initial talk that you have given till now, I believe that the vision, the smaller vision for Ketch also is the baseline for
That is
Shipa.
right.
Is that
So
right?
Ketch mimics or Ketch has the same concepts of Shipa. So you're going to see when we talk about pools, pools is one of the main concepts on Shipa is where your controls reside around. So we brought that concept to Ketch. And gradually, we plan on increasing that scope of the pool, so have around the same kind of deployment aspects of Shipa and capabilities, but Ketch follows exactly the same concept and methodologies of Shipa.
Interesting.
And I have here my terminal in front of me. We have a cluster spun up on GKE, and if the demo gods helps us, I assume we're going to have an application running by the end of it. So do we want to get started maybe in going through how we can get Ketch implemented?
Sure.
Awesome. So as mentioned, I have a cluster here. It's called Ketch Live. It's running on GKE, and I have it connected to my local terminal or my local machine. And you can find all the information on getting started with Ketch on learn.dketch.io. And Ketch is just written in a little bit of a different way. But it represents basically a smaller boat. If some people are curious about the name, it represents a smaller boat. So the way we thought about it, the name was chosen by the team, and it's a subsection of a larger vision, right? So that's why we went with the name. Plus, the name also kind of sounds nice. But you can learn more about Ketch and go through the detailed documentation as well as getting started through learn.dketch.io, and that's what we're going to be using. The first step that I'm going to go through is basically installing the CLI. It's a simple one command. It downloads the binary and places into your user local bin folder. Great, that is done and installed. The next step that Ketch actually needs is your cert manager, right? Especially if you're dealing with adding CNAME to your apps and you are going to be adding HTTPS endpoints to your app, then Ketch is going to leverage the cert manager in your cluster.
Can you increase the font a bit?
Oh yeah, of course. Sorry. Is this any better, or do you want to
Yes.
maybe? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, maybe a one or two more plus would do more good.
There you go.
Yeah. Perfect.
No problem. So we get, let me remove this Istio. So we got basically Ketch CLI installed. Let me make this one larger as well. Sorry. We got Ketch CLI installed. We got Cert Manager installed. Ketch today supports both traffic and Istio. One of the plans that we have is to extend that to support Nginx and other options as well. But right now, as a first version, we're going with traffic and Istio. So I'll go with Istio as an option and install it in my cluster.
So there's a question by someone. Does Ketch is complete open source now?
Yeah, Ketch is completely open source, and you can find it under GitHub, Shipa Core, and then Ketch, because again, Ketch is a subsection of Shipa, but it's completely open source, and you can have access to everything that we're doing now and help us, which we're going to be talking a little bit about later, I guess. There you go. So Istio is installed. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to export the path so I can access Istio. And I'll set the profile for Istio and install. So basically, the cluster I had was a raw cluster. There was nothing installed in it. And we're going through from the beginning. That's why I'm installing Istio. If you already have Istio installed in your cluster, or you have traffic already installed in your cluster, as well as Cert Manager, you don't need to go through that process. There you go. Istio is installed. The next steps for us is basically to, if you don't have, again, a cluster issuer installed or present in your cluster, let me get that installed as well. It's fairly straightforward to get Ktech installed. Great. So now basically everything that we need is installed at this point. Cluster issuer, cert manager, Istio. The last thing for me to do is basically install Ketch itself, the Ketch controller. Great, and we're basically done. So the install itself it's fairly easy, especially if you're running already some issue in your cluster or traffic in your cluster and you have cert manager. Basically, the only thing you're going to be installing is the Ketch controller. So it shouldn't be much of an issue to get it installed. The next step is for us to basically deploy an application, right? But before we deploy an application, to take a step back, like we were talking before, we have the concept of pools on Ketch. And it's the same concept that we have inside Shipa, right? When you look at a pool is directly mapped to a namespace in your cluster where your applications are going to be deployed. When you start migrating over towards Shipa, the way when we came up with the pool concept is for your platform engineering team or your DevOps team to build controls around it. So you can set security scan levels, you can set connections to external apps, such as maybe Amazon RDS or external Postgres that you want to serve your applications, which teams can use. So it's a way for you to build controls around your application deployment at the app level. And we brought the same concept to Ketch. So pool is it's a smaller subset, but it's exactly the same concept. When you're creating a pool, basically you have to point it to which ingress you're using, either traffic or Istio, and you need to pass it basically your ingress controller, your endpoint for that. If I go to workloads, I can find it based on my cluster. Oh, sorry, services and ingress. There you go. Ketch pool add, and I'll pass the name of the pool. So you can name it whatever pool you want. And one thing to notice, when you do a Ketch pool add, it is going to create a new namespace in your cluster called Ketch-dev, where your applications are going to be deployed. But if you want to point Ketch or the pool to use an existing namespace that you already have, you can pass a namespace flag and the name of the namespace. So instead of creating a new namespace, Ketch will just use that namespace, specific namespace for the pools.
Awesome.
So the pool is created. If we do a Ketch pool list, for example, we can see the dev pool that we created. If we do Ketch app list, we see right now it's empty, and that's my terminal behaving weirdly. But you can see right now it's empty right now. We haven't created any app, but we see the pool. You can create as many pools as you want. And one of the things we've seen with Shipa, it's folks are basically creating pools based on either teams or maybe based on clouds or regions or apps or projects, and then setting the security around it based on the app requirement or maybe the environment requirement. I'll create a simple application basically from here, a bulletin board. Simon and I were talking about it. It's probably the most complex app you've ever seen in the world.
So what happens when we we have a pool? So a pool is logical space. So it's basically a namespace.
That's right.
In the namespace that it creates the pool. And when we create multiple pools, so does it fall under the same namespace, or will it be a different namespace altogether?
Those are options that you can set. If you just do Ketch pool add and the name, then it will create other namespaces. But if you do catch pool add and use the namespace flag and point to that namespace you created before, then it's going to keep using the same namespace. So it really depends on how you want to set up things.
Okay.
So the catch app list. Now, sorry about my terminal. We see that the application has been created. The bulletin board app, it's inside pool dev. Right now it's 0 units because we haven't basically deployed anything at this point. But Ketch already gives it an address, basically an endpoint where you can hit your application. Which
basically the Ketch app creates an ingress behind the scenes.
That is right. Yep.
And it gives you a host where you automatically generate this name with the IP that you have mentioned and shipa.cloud.
That is right. Exactly. So before, if I'm deploying an application, basically, I would need to understand what the requirements are from a Kubernetes perspective. What are the objects I need to create, my deployment YAML file, and so on. And that's where we try to improve from a developer perspective. If I'm deploying the app, I'm just going to do a catch app deploy, and I'm going to pass my image from my Docker repository or JFrog or others that you may use. Damn. I don't know why this thing keeps doing this. I'll fix it later. So if we do a catch app list now, it shows that now we have 1 new unit, right? So the application has been deployed. If I basically copy this bulletin board endpoint that Ketch created, if everything goes well, we should see an application. There you go. So me as a developer, I don't know the deployment YAML files. I don't know these things, but I can easily get my application up and running. And we understand that while this may fit some of the purpose, maybe you need to customize your application. Maybe your application is not as simple, right? Maybe you need to do something different. One of the things you can do with Ketch is catch app export.
Okay.
Where catch export is going to basically export your application Helm chart. It's going to create automatically a Helm chart from your application that you have deployed. So if I do, let me just create a Helm folder, and I do app export. I'll say bulletin board, catch, and I'll say Helm. Okay. So if I go inside my Helm directory, I basically have my chart here with my application. Inside my template, I have my deployment YAML file, my ingress file, service, and so on. That basically you have this auto-generated by Ketch. So if you need to make changes, you can change, add, or customize anything you need from a Helm perspective, and then basically just implement or update the app in your cluster as well.
Nice. And basically people can actually use to just expose their app as a Helm chart as well via Ketch.
Exactly.
Can also be one of the use case.
Yep. If you want to share your application or maybe save it as part of your Git repo as a source for your app for deployment later, you can do that as well.
So when you did a deploy, so it actually created a deployment, right? Can we see the deployment where it is?
So you mean from a
kubectl perspective? Yeah.
Yep.
Get deploy.
So as mentioned, Ketch creates, because I didn't specify an existing namespace, Ketch basically created one called catch-dev, which is the name of the pool. So if we do get pods and inside catch-dev, basically I can see my application here running.
And by default, Ketch takes 2 replicas, I can see. Or is it 2 containers?
2 containers.
Okay, 2 containers, fine.
And basically, you can see everything that happened from your application perspective as well, and you have all the info here. So Ketch automates the creation of the required objects, and again, later, if you need, you can export the Helm charts and update whatever you need for your application, or share it or store it as well.
Okay, so the two containers are one for the application and another one is for the Istio proxy.
Mhm.
If we didn't have Istio and we had traffic, then in that case, also in that case, how many containers it would generate? Only a single application container or any other proxy?
No, it would generate the container for the application in that case.
Only, right, right. Because this is injected by Istio, I believe, right?
That's right. Yep. You have other options like mentioned. If you need to expose your application through a different CNAME, Ketch exposes this one by default, which is a .shipa.cloud extension and your IP. But if you need to expose it to as an external app to your users, you need to have control over your DNS. Ketch doesn't change your DNS manager in that case. But if you add it to your DNS manager, basically you could say demo dot thecatch.io, for example, and then the app would be bulletin board in that case. And they will add the CNAME directly, generate the certificate, and add to your application as an endpoint as well.
Nice.
Yeah. Does that make sense as a kind of step? So we try to make it as simple as possible. Of course, there are always ways to improve it, and we're working on it, on expanding Catch, the pool concept within Catch, ingress controllers. But does that make sense from a user perspective?
Yes, absolutely. I believe like the so we have to get to the point where we have Dockerized the application. So we have the image somewhere in some registry, Docker Hub, QA, JFrog, whatever it is. So from that till there, if we are done, then our job is done. So a developer may not know anything. He just have the catch installed on his machine, and they just do a catch app create, and then they create they deploy the application with the URL of the image, and that's it. The only part is like, can we do some level of customization to the deployment, like usage of config maps? So how do we do those things, secrets, config maps, and because they are very day to day job. uh,
Mm-hmm.
they are really important because most of the apps would definitely require a config map or a secret. So how do we map those specific things from Ketch?
Yeah, we're bringing that piece to the pre-deployment part where you can customize that. Some of the customization that you need to do, you can achieve it either from a what we call a catch YAML file, which you can specify some hooks to run some specific script to your application when the application is being deployed or when the application is being restarted every time. Um,
Hmm.
if you need to expose specific ports, you can also run a catch YAML file to expose that specific port. Or if you want some proc file, for example, to execute kind of web commands or other web processes or other processes that you need as workers when the application is being started, you can use that. Now, one of the things that we're doing is we're building in a way that we're going to allow you to do use Catch basically to generate the Helm chart before it is deployed. So it generates the Helm chart, and then you can insert secrets or any other changes, and then basically deploy that Helm chart using Catch as well, if you want, or you can just do a Helm install. But that's a process that we are working through right now.
Yeah, I think that would be a really good addition because already there is a Helm chart implementation, so you
Mm-hmm.
can generate the Helm chart. It's just that we want it just before a prompt or some kind of thing, that before deploying the app, it asks for some values, or maybe you can have some flags where you give a small configuration file of the deployment YAML, and that gets injected over to the application, and
Mm-hmm.
then your YAML file gets generated. Something like that I think would be really interesting to see.
Yep.
Or maybe I'm thinking too much, or if we have a very bare minimum web UI that can be shipped with Ketch, and we
Mm-hmm.
can just upload the YAML file for the
Sure.
config, and we can have the image selected or the image written, and then we just click deploy and it gets deployed, maybe.
That is a good option because a web dashboard is something that we have on the roadmap for Catch as well. I think the team tremendous job when it came to Shipa, and I can show a little bit of that later. But we're gonna look at bringing at least kind of some of the functionalities over to Ketch to give you some more flexibility and visibility over the apps as well. So that is part of the roadmap, and maybe that is one of the options, allowing the user to load the files directly from there and have the app deployed from there as well.
Yeah, that would be handy.
Agree.
So, tell us more about the pools. I want to know more about the pools. So how would why are they there in the first place? How are they benefiting?
Yeah, so pool, the pool concept came from Shipa, right? And
Agreed.
let me, and I can open a pool file from Shipa, which you can also create uh, from the Shipa dashboard, but that should help as well to see.
Yeah, I mean, yes, we will go to the Shipa part, but was just eager to know something about the pools.
Yeah, because the reason why we created pool, we noticed that there are a lot of issues when it comes to the platform engineering team defining metrics and guardrails and controls around the applications that are being deployed, right? Some of the solutions that are out there today, they're very infrastructure centric. So you're defining rules on a Kubernetes object base, which creates complexity, and not all the platform engineering teams or DevOps teams, they're very comfortable in writing these rules and getting very extensive and learning new languages and so on. So we thought of a way to bring some guardrails of control, but at the application layer level instead. And that's when we came up with the pool, in a way that what matters to the application from a security perspective. So is it resource consumption? Is it security scan consumption? Is it network policy consumption? So we started putting together what we believed was a bare minimum for you as a platform engineer to define as security and controls for your application. And where should you define that in a way that every time an application is deployed using that, basically automatically the application gets those security guardrails and controls applied to it automatically. So the platform engineer, they make sure that these guardrails are in place, and at the same time, we free up the developer from having to learn how to do these things, right? So that's when we came up with the pool concept. And we brought the same pool concept to Ketch. Right now, the pool concept within Ketch is much simpler, is directly related to the namespace itself, but gradually we'll probably bring more and more from Shipa pool into the Ketch pool as well.
Cool. So I have few questions. I'll
Yeah,
put them on the screen for you
sure.
as well. So first one is, does pool helps to isolate across multiple projects?
Yeah, that is one of the utilizations we see. So either using pools to isolate between projects. So you can create a project called maybe e-commerce, which has a specific set of resource consumption for your apps, a specific type of network policy or a security scan and so on. And maybe you have another application that is sitting on development, for example. So security scans are not that tight. Network policies are not that tight as well. So you can we've seen users using the pools basically to isolate environments. And especially when it comes to high regulated industries where they need to make sure production is really tight, zero trust, and so on, then you can apply these easily as you move kind of across environments as well.
Okay, and I think you already answered this, that we have the plan to have integrations with other Linkerd, etc.
Yeah, we understand there are a lot of options out there, and the way we're trying to go is basically the supports that we already have on Shipa. It's a natural choice to bring to Ketch, and then that's where we started, and we're trying to map the ones that users are using the most from a market share perspective, and that's how we're progressing. But we're working towards adding more support, basically.
Yeah, and Sangam says that's really good use of traffic. And there's one more. You can give application catalog where you can add secrets and other things for security or even rollback features. So I think that comes at the point where we were talking about some of the features that we can bring in.
That's right. So the catalog is the feature that you mentioned, for example, as one of the options on how to handle it and inject other changes that you need. When it comes to rollback and other security features, those are features that we already have built on Shipa. So eventually those may get cascaded down to Ketch as well, from a rollback and other security aspect perspective. But yeah, those are definitely valid points.
So I am having an interesting thought right now. I know we didn't plan for this, but
Okay.
uh, can I install Ketch and run everything your demo app on K3s cluster?
It should.
Big Ketch fan.
I, I I hope it works. Yeah, yeah, you definitely can,
Okay,
and it
I'll
should
just
work.
share the screen
Okay.
and maybe I have already a VM created, so it's a bare
Okay.
VM. It doesn't have anything, and
Mhm.
let's see if we can do something with it.
Sure.
So I'll share the screen. You can see, right?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, I have documentation opened on the other side, and I think probably I can just start copy pasting the commands.
Okay.
So first one, I think we should have a catch installed, right?
Yeah, you should have your cluster up and running at that point. If you don't have cert manager and the other requirements,
Yeah.
you should have it there as part of your cluster as well. But yeah, catch CLI is the first step.
Okay. So now let me have K3s. K3s is simple to install, so
Hmm.
there we go. It's installing K3s.
And how do you see users using K3s? Do you see the usage increasing and increasing every time more by developers, or do you think there are other applications that you are seeing as well, kind of K3s picking up?
I think K3s now, K3s actually was production ready itself. So it
Mhm.
never was the case like it was built for only the developer set of environment. So it was already with a thought process that it has to be used for production ready environments. And it is getting used in a lot of edge use cases in the industries. And
Mhm.
even at CO, we have a K3s managed service. So the first one to provide a K3s managed clusters, so that shows that it has the potential. And
Mhm.
with now it is a CNCF approved project, so it's a sandbox project now, and with that I think the growth will continue rise.
Nice, nice. Agree. I've seen people using more and more.
Yeah, so we have our cluster already running, so let's do kubectl get nodes and see. Yes, it's already running. Now what we'll do is I'll just export the kube config file. Maybe somewhere it uses at some places, and we don't have to install Istio, so we can skip that step, right?
Yeah, because I think K3s is shipped with a traffic, if I'm not
Yes,
mistaken.
yes,
Okay.
yes. kubectl get pause. I can show you that. So we have traffic running. We have local path provisioner.
Hmm.
So all those things are already there. So we should not have. So I think we can move to the cert manager step, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay, so let me just deploy the cert manager, and here we go. Actually, QA was having some issues today. There
Hmm.
was issue reported earlier about cert manager not behaving properly. So let's see if the degraded performance is still there or it's fine. Yeah, it's fine. It's running, container creating. And in the meanwhile, I'll copy the next command, which is, I think, the catch controller.
Cluster is cluster issuer. Yeah, if installed already in your cluster. In that case, if you are later going to use C names and so on.
So let's just wait for this,
Hmm.
or we can just do why it wants me to describe. I don't want to describe the pod. Let's see what. I already copied the YAML, the command for applying that,
uh,
so I have to copy again. Okay, no problem. Let's see what's happening. Yeah, I told you QA is having issues today. So what we'll do is I'll just delete this pod and hopefully it runs again. kubectl lead pod manager. Okay, it's
There we
now
go.
running, it's getting ready. So at least the image is pulled now. So we are
Mhm.
happy with that. Now let me again copy the file, the command basically to apply the Ketch controller, and here is it. So we just apply the Ketch controller.yaml. Okay, it created a lot of CRT
Sure.
rollback, and then the services, the cluster issuer. Okay, cool. So it's done. Let me just see if started running. Oh, it
Mhm.
started running already.
Yeah.
Nice. And now what we have is we'll add a pool,
Hmm. That's right.
and so I'll not copy the IP because I have to change the endpoint, which is 185.136.235.25, and then we have to, I think, type mention the ingress type as traffic.
That's right. And we do that as well in cases, for example, such as K3S, that comes with a with traffic installed. But in case you have also, or you install Istio inside that cluster, then you can choose which ingress do you want to use for that specific pool that you're creating.
So if you don't give it, automatically chooses whatever is there, right?
I believe it defaults to traffic, but I have to check with the
Hmm.
team. To be honest, I
Okay.
don't remember.
Okay, no problem. And now what we do is we create the same app,
Hmm.
the super complicated app,
Exactly.
and now we deploy the app. So we do this, and it says it's successfully deployed. And now what we do is we do a catch app list.
Mhm.
Oh, awesome. It says 1 unit, and my app is deployed already, and it gave me a nice URL. Let me just open this URL, and I will share the screen with you. If it works, then only I'll share, else I'll not share. Okay, yeah, it worked. So now let me share the other window, application window, and here it is. Boom. Okay,
Exactly.
so Ketch, basically we just found out that Ketch is running successfully without any issues on K3s cluster. So I just had CentOS box, and I installed Ketch and every resource from scratch, and you can see it worked.
Hmm.
So I trust the software now. Okay, so nice. Now what we will do is how let's talk about Shipa now, and see where what vision you had before creating Shipa, and what problems you saw. Maybe you talked to some end users, or how did you found out like this is the particular issue that has to be resolved, and then maybe you have to found a startup or a company around it. So tell us your journey about that.
Yeah, so as mentioned, I was mostly focused on the cloud native infrastructure space rather than the application. But I saw my own team struggling when it came to the application deployment and where to deploy, how to deploy, comply with some of the security requirements. And I saw my team struggling with that every time. Every time we had to deploy an application and perform the test and make sure everything worked on our side. And talking to other organizations, I saw that that was not only our problem, but it was a problem that I saw other organizations that where they wanted to start adopting Kubernetes, they had that problem, right? So how do I get my developers to move fast, implement their applications, roll out updates, and at the same time, I keep control of these things. We had a chance to look at the market and the options that we had out there. One thing that we learned was the options that were available at that time, they were very infrastructure or Kubernetes focused, right? There are a lot of vendors and a lot of options that were taking care of the cluster management piece. which is great. It adds a lot of value, but there was a gap when it came to the application side, right? There was really no one tackling the application side properly, and the folks that were trying to tackle the application side, they were tackling it from a cluster perspective. So how can you implement your application on this type of cluster, and then you just create a Helm chart and you create this and you create that, and then which is great. Everyone adds value in a way, but it doesn't get the developer where they need to go. And at the same time, you still leave the platform engineering team or the DevOps team struggling around on how do I connect security into my application process? How do I define network policies? Which man, it's a problem for everyone. I think when they're using especially Istio, Envoy, and these things, how do you define it at an application level? So we saw as people were moving towards more and more towards Kubernetes, they were still thinking about infrastructure and YAML files and components. So we saw it would be a good opportunity to bring it at an application level. So think back as an application engineer or platform engineer, what do you need to define as security from an application perspective? Forget the cluster. Define the security roles and the definitions that you need in a way that it later can be applied to any cluster. Doesn't really matter if it's GKE, AKS, on-premises, Kubernetes, but think about the application. And on the other side, how do you connect that security definition to your developers in a way that you free up the developer from the infrastructure, they focus on the application code, on the updates, and every time they deploy, the securities, they get merged, gets applied to the application, and it keeps operating at an application level. So we started talking to a lot of companies before we even started developing Shipa, and we could see that it was exactly the same pattern. A lot of folks, they were spending between 1 and 2 years basically to create a platform on top of Kubernetes. They were building a large team to do it, and still their developers were not happy, applications were not properly controlled. So we decide that would be a good opportunity for us at that moment to basically start building Shipa based on that experience and feedback. So that's how we came up with Shipa.
Yeah, I think that's really true. Kubernetes is really great. It's the de facto choice for running containerized applications, and have grown to a certain maturity level where it's where anyone who wants to run containers, they have like, yes, we want to run on Kubernetes. Nobody says now we want to run containers. They just say we want to run Kubernetes and we want our applications to be there.
Exactly.
But Kubernetes has a learning curve. And if you are from a core, just a programming, and you haven't seen the terminal that much, you have not been in that space, so it becomes a kind of like job, why I should do this when I should focus on creating the application, why I have to create the cluster and then design the application for that, right, the YAML files and all the other Kubernetes objects. So that actually is a problem, and I think it's really great to see this type of tools and companies pitching in and solving this problem. So that's why I was talking the first time. So cloud native is a community, and within the community, people are actually building stuff and creating organizations from that. And how they are doing it, finding a specific problem, because there are a lot of gaps in the cloud native ecosystem. So find the right gap, then try to find a solution and build it. Community is there to support.
Exactly.
So I think that's the right way. Can we have a look at Shipa, like how it looks, how it performs, and can you just give something from that?
Yeah, of course. I have Shipa open here, and one caveat before I get into that as well is you get into that discussion, which I get a lot, in saying that it's good for developers to learn Kubernetes. It's good for the platform engineering team to learn Kubernetes, and at Shipa we completely agree with that thing. Right, learning is always good. Understanding what's happening is always good. But the way I say it is, different people, they have different roles and responsibilities within the organization, right? The developers' roles, and they are paid for, and the value they deliver is for delivering applications and updates, not infrastructure, right? And many times the platform engineering team, you bring a lot of value if you start shifting towards building controls and security around it, rather than gluing a bunch of things together with a bunch of YAMLs and custom scripts and customized. There's value on that, but if you can start focusing more on the app, and the way I try to compare it is, we can all learn how to make pizza, right? And it's good for us. Maybe one day I love making pizzas, man. But it's not every time that I want to eat pizza. I'll go buy all the ingredients, make the dough, putting everything together, baking, and then 5 hours later, I'm eating my pizza. You just want something that you can allow you to focus on what you want to get done, right? So that's kind of how I try to think about it. And that was the premise on how we started building Shipa, which is basically the dashboard you have in front of you. The Shipa can be operated both from the dashboard perspective as well as from the CLI perspective. As mentioned, everything revolves around pools, right? So when you're creating a pool, you're defining things which you can do either from the CLI, both from the CLI as well as from the dashboard. But you can define things such as, is this pool a default one? In a way that when your developers, they deploy apps, if they don't specify a pool, that's the one that's going to pick up and deploy the applications automatically. How much CPU, memory, and swap applications deployed through that pool can automatically consume. The level of security scans and any exception, all the way down to network policies and so on. So basically, you're defining the guardrails and the controls. You're defining your pool. Once that pool is created, you can attach that pool to basically any cluster that you have running. So if you have AKS running, GKE running, OKE running, for example, from Oracle, you can attach these pools to the different clusters that you have. So now your developers, they don't have to think about APIs. They don't have to think about the deployment sets. How do I tackle different clusters? And different clusters, they may require different objects. Basically, you're defining these pools and attaching to the different clusters that you have.
So which clusters, is it any cluster like or specific cloud provider clusters?
We support today most of the major cloud providers. So Azure, AWS, Google, Oracle, and IBM, I would say, as well as your own premises Kubernetes version 1.14 up, basically today.
Okay. Yeah, once we come out of beta, I think we'll have CVO listed over there.
Definitely. Once you define the cluster, you define the pools, you attach the pool to the cluster, you give access to the pool to your different users, your developers. So when they are deploying their applications, they can just do Shipa app create, for example, the name of the application, which team is the owner of the application in case I have different teams or I'm part of different teams, and then where you want to deploy, so in which pool you want to deploy. Different than Ketch, Shipa can also deploy an existing image that you have sitting inside Docker Hub, Artifactory, or others, but also Shipa can deploy directly from your source code. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, if you're deploying it directly from your CI pipeline, for example, you can just run a Shipa CI, which is a Python component, and you say Shipa CI, you connect to Shipa, and you do a deployment of your code. Shipa will automatically pick up the code, build the image, and deploy it in your cluster, and you can address things such as canary, which before you would be struggling yourself with Istio to understand and make that thing work. Here, you just put basically 3 steps, so the number of steps, interval, and others. With the app deploy, once the app is, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, where do we like you mentioned teams somewhere? Okay, I see the teams at the bottom. So you can have different teams, and you can create different applications for different teams. So basically, if I am part of, say, a dev team, and I deploy one application for the admin team, so the dev team won't be able to see the apps from the admin team, right?
That is right, unless, which we have an option called, Shipa login, Shipa.io. Let me see if that's credential. Okay, unless you use something we call Shipa app grant. We understand you as a team developer, maybe Dev1 team, you are the owner of the app, but let's say you need, or better yet, your application is in production. Now your SRE team is actually the owner of the application because you move the applications between the pools. But in case there is a problem and you need to bring the developer back to support the application for a specific time, then you can use Shipa app grant and give access to the application to a different team. So you can actually share access to the application as you need or as you see fit.
Nice. So you said we can have a different node pools. So in the cluster section, I can see different clusters that are connected to my Shipa account or whatever. I think this is a Shipa account, right? That we are having.
That's right.
So we have a Shipa account and we have different set of cluster pools over there, and we can choose which cluster to deploy, or can Shipa choose based on the resources available on which clusters to deploy? Can that
Uh,
happen?
that's a good question. So as a developer, you don't even see the clusters. As a developer, all you see are pools. The pools that me as a platform engineer, I gave you access when I created the pools. So you don't even think at a cluster level. You're always thinking, these are the pools. Maybe one pool is called dev, the other one QA, and the other one is production. And as a developer, I'm just deploying across these pools. So you don't think cluster as a developer in that case.
Okay, cool.
And once the apps are deployed, basically you have information, transactions if your application is having access, the resource consumption for your applications, life cycle. So everything that happened with your application, such as when it was created, when it was deployed, when the application scaled up or down, who did what, and the log attached to that, as well as the rollback. I think that was one of the points that was brought up before. If you have multiple deployment versions, basically you can roll back to any deployment directly from here, all the way to the security scan reports, integrations into external incident management tools, such as Slack, Ops, Genie. So if there is anything wrong with your application, Shipa automatically sends the logs there, as well as the network policies that you can define at an application layer level. And you get visibility over your application, so you know, as a developer, here's the application code that I deployed, my Node.js app. And basically here on this side is everything that Shipa created automatically for you. All the containers, connection to external services, such as an external Postgres database, the dependencies, the images, the pod, the ingress, and all the network policies that it actually picked up from the configuration set that you did. So you can see that my Node.js application can connect to these apps within these pools and within this port. So now you can support the application. Now you understand what your application is actually made of, and you can actually keep on moving from an operational perspective.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Another question that I had is the clusters that I am having, when we connect them to Shipa, so what all things get installed on those clusters?
So when you're installing clusters or you're adding clusters to Shipa, what you're gonna be seeing there is basically some monitoring services being installed, and yeah, basically you're gonna see some monitoring being installed. So every application that is deployed there, we can see what's happening and track that. Which by default on the back end, from an application perspective, we use Prometheus. Which you can then export to an external Prometheus or Datadog or New Relic, which we have integrations. And when you add a cluster to a Shipa pool, basically you need to create a service account for Shipa in that cluster. So Shipa is able to deploy the apps, add the pools, and so on.
Okay. And roughly how many resources Shipa takes, if any Shipa tools are deployed? Any idea of that?
From an app. Well, there are two. That's a good question. So there are two things to look when you're deploying Shipa itself. That's kind of the configuration, the minimal configuration we ask the users to have, because Shipa is installing security components, Shipa is installing monitoring and a bunch of stuff. So if you're scaling up to a certain point, we ask you for the Shipa nodes where Shipa is installed to be 2 CPUs and 8 gig of RAM. Now, if you're talking about the clusters where apps are going to be deployed, then it will heavily depend on your apps and how much resources you're going to assign to your apps automatically using the pools. But from a Shipa controller perspective, that's what we recommend.
And can we move the apps between the pools? Maybe for disaster recovery purpose or something.
You definitely can. We have the Shipa app move command available, where you can move the application between pools. And we've seen users using it in different ways, disaster recovery, or maybe I've even seen companies where they don't like upgrading Kubernetes because it's just too time consuming, resource consuming. So they create a new cluster with a new version. They get the pool, they create the pool in that cluster, attach it to Shipa in the pool, and then they just do an app move of their apps to the new cluster, and then they drop the other cluster. So they don't need to do all the upgrades, and your apps get all moved to the new cluster. So that is one of the use cases that I've seen out there.
Nice. Yeah, that's, I mean, pretty interesting use cases. And yes, definitely. Even I'm right now, thinking a lot of things like what all, what all we can do with it. So that's where the questions are coming in. Uh, so I think that's pretty cool. So one thing, like how our community who is watching us right now or will be watching us later, so how they can get involved with Shipa, like how they can try, they can use, they can contribute, like what some motivation, like how they can contribute in open source, maybe Ketch or directly
Mhm.
Shipa, anything on that?
Yeah, so from a Shipa perspective, Shipa has even though Shipa is not core open source, the core is not open source from a Shipa perspective. It is free for you to start using, and we would love to hear about ideas that you have or use cases that Shipa does not cover yet, or maybe challenges or issues that you find. I mean, I say software is 80% ready, and the other 20% is just lipstick. So you're always going to find bugs everywhere, right? So we appreciate
Right.
if you find anything helping us on track. If you want to get involved, Catch and contribute. Catch is a great way because Catch is basically the deployment open component of Shipa that is open source. It's fully open source in that sense. So you can contribute, you can submit changes, requests, and so on, and the team is going to be working with you. So that's the best way for you to get involved from a code contribution perspective.
Nice. And where do you see Shipa? Like, what's the next vision where you see Shipa? Like, you had a problem, and you think that how much percentage of the problem you think Shipa is solving as of now, and what do you think is the going forward vision for Shipa?
I think that's an awesome question because applications are really different from company to company, right? So it's really hard for us to say we fix the problem for every use case for every application out there. That is the end goal. That is the end goal, to get to more and more applications and get. I know folks are really passionate about Kubernetes, and so am I. I think Kubernetes is very is very powerful tool, and it has its right place in the stack. But our end vision is to get people to think more and more about application delivery speed and controls, and start targeting more and more use cases for different applications that we see out there. So that's the vision that we're moving towards. We're probably 20-30% there. There's still a lot more to learn, and that's why we want to be part of the community. We want folks to get involved in Catch and say, for me to deploy my app, this is what I would need to see, right? And this is how it would need to work. So that's why we want to make sure that we don't build Shipa based on what we think only, but what the community sees as use cases that would help them to think at an application layer level rather than infrastructure.
Definitely. I think, like, yeah, I, as a community person, I am, I was very excited to see Ketch because I was actually waiting for Shipa to open source something. And you find it. You remember when I talked to you first time, the first
Yeah.
question is like, ask, what are you open sourcing next? And now you did. And I was really excited. Like, we should have a small talk about it and let the community be excited about it, because this is something that definitely is very interesting. And like, I mean, different use cases are there. You can just have your app exported as a helm chart using Ketch. That is one use case. You can deploy your image as Ketch
Mhm.
using Ketch, so that's another use case. And then when you start contributing more and more issues, PRs, like you said, the team is supportive, and our
Mhm.
awesome community, obviously, when people come together, they build awesome stuff.
Mhm.
So I think it has great things. So wish you all the best, and I'll be actively working with you for sure. So for the next things that we come up with. And now we have our giveaway, so don't go anywhere because that is very important.
Mhm.
So thanks to Bruno for doing some giveaway. So we have few forms. So I have 13 responses as of now, so I'll quickly download the spreadsheet, and we'll do three giveaways. That is fine. So three giveaways. So Bruno, what I want you to do is, I have the Excel with me now,
Okay.
and just tell me your three lucky numbers, or just any numbers from one to ranging from 1 to 13.
5, 11,
Five. Okay.
and 25.
5, 11, and 25. So five is one, two, three, four, five. Saloni is five. So I'll type the name. Actually, I can type the name. So let me just type that. Let me use StreamYard for good. So the first winner, and so you said 5, 11, and
And 25.
25 is not there. So 1 to 13.
Oh, 13. 1, 11, and 13.
Okay, 1, 11, 13. So
5, 11,
11,
and 13. Sorry. Yeah.
sorry, yeah, 5 is done, and 11 is Shivanda. I don't know if I'm pronouncing right, but I'll copy the name exactly from whatever you have given in the Excel. So, Shivanada, you are the second winner of the swag, and the last one is 13, which is Asim. So you have. I'll add that banner as well. So congratulations to the winner, and thank you all for watching. So I'll give your contact information to Bruno, and the Shipa team will contact you directly, and they will ship some swag to you. That's basically some fun, some motivation for you people to sticking around till the end and watching the stream and learning something, and and getting some swag as well. So it's a win-win situation. I used to do a lot of meetups when COVID was not there. So we did the same kind of thing. We interacted, we talked, and in the end, we do some swag giveaways, and that's how we just meet. So this is another way. We are trying our best, and we are hopefully we are going in the right direction, and we are making it fun. We are doing demos, we are talking, taking inspirations, how to get involved, how to get started, and all those things. So it was really interesting to hear out from Bruno how the journey got started and where it is now, where it is headed to, and how you as a community can get involved. So that's pretty important. I'm sure, like people who will be watching it later also, please don't hesitate to contact Bruno. So Bruno, any Slack or anything is there where people can join, or any forum? Can you have me paste me the link so can I can pass it on?
Yeah, of course.
You can
The
send me in the private chat. Yeah.
I just sent it right now. There is a Slack channel, and you can find it as well on the GitHub for Ketch. So if you go to our website, dketch.io, you can find the GitHub link, and directly from there as well, you can find the Slack communities, which is definitely the easiest way to get in contact and get the conversation going as well.
Awesome. I think I have already given the link in the chat. So please feel free to join the Slack channel and get involved with the community. And congratulations again to Saloni, Shivanada, and Asim for winning today's swag. And thank you, Bruno, for coming here, spending time. I know busy person, you have a lot of things to
No, it's
do.
okay.
And
We're all busy these days. Yeah.
yeah. So any last thoughts for the community that you have?
No, I appreciate the opportunity of being here. I appreciate everyone who's watching this now, as well as who's going to watch later. Please do get involved. Go through, submit your PR, submit your ideas. As Sayan said, when we all get involved, we build awesome stuff. And again, we want to make sure that we are part of the community and we build this based on your feedback. So I really appreciate everyone taking the time today.
Yes. So thank you all for joining. We'll sign off today, and but we'll keep meeting in the next live stream. So make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit reminders on the next upcoming live streams. Till then, see you. Bye bye.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye.
Bye, Bruno.